my son. The day you were born, the very forests of Lordaeron whispered the name Arthas.
Like, comment, and subscribe if you want to see more videos like this. Today we'll be tackling on one of the best characters ever written and the best character from the Warcraft universe, Arthas Menethil. Now, the story of Arthas Menethil starts when new blood joins the earth and the young prince was there to see it with his very own eyes. On the Balnir farm, the mare known as Brightmane was giving birth to a foal, and the 9-year-old Arthas was there to help with the birth as much as he could. Now, you see, the young prince would often come to the Balnir farm to look at the horses, and he made the son of the stable master one of his companions. Now, normally you wouldn't see a prince make a companion out of someone of such low birth, but there was no one that could tell him who to make friends with. Now, going back to the story. Once Brightmane gave birth, she laid her head upon Arthas' lap, and he gently stroked her mane. The Balnirs took the foal and cleaned him up, and once the foal tried to stand up, him and Arthas met their eyes, and it was an instant moment of magic where Arthas discovered the miracle of life. After that, Brightmane didn't waste any time, and she started her motherly job by getting up and cleaning the young foal. At that point, Arthas was covered in straws from the barn. Now, from outside came the rattle of chickens. Something was disturbing the farm animals. Arthas knew exactly what caused that commotion, and he started running outside, where he met Uther upon his own horse, Steadfast. Now, Arthas pleaded with Uther to not scare the farm animals, and that, well, the farmers did nothing wrong. But Arthas stopped when he saw that Uther was wearing his armor. Uther took the young prince and put him upon his horse, and they started riding towards the palace. Now, while on the road, Arthas asked Uther what happened, and Uther started to explain. I think that very much shocked Arthas at the time, and it was the news of Stormwind's fall. The Stormwindian refugees came on boats to Southshore, and the Regent Lord of Stormwind, Anduin Lothar, and the young Prince Varian would arrive soon at the palace to inform King Menethil of what happened to their kingdom. Now, Arthas was a child at this point, and thus he had a childish inquisitive nature, and that made him continue asking questions about how many survivors there were, the answer being many, as you would expect, and if Prince Varian is coming, what about King Lane? It was then that Arthas learned the truth. Prince Varian would become King Varian. His father being dead, Stormwind had no other person left to rule it. Now, this was a truth that shocked Arthas, in part because he was close to his own family, and that made the young prince feel sorry for his Stormwindian counterpart. A few days later, Arthas would be keeping company to a guard named Farik upon the palace walls. Now, Arthas has spent some time upon the palace walls with the guard because he was awaiting for the arrival of Anduin Lothar and Varian. But they didn't come. So Arthas lost all hope, and he planned to go to the Balnirs instead to see how the newborn foal was doing. And it was then that Arthas saw them, Anduin Lothar, Khadgar, and Prince Varian coming towards the palace. He told Falric with enthusiasm about that. Falric wanted to send a guard named Marwyn, but Arthas was so eager to let his father know that he took off by himself. Now, see, his father was King Terenas Menethil, and he stood upon his throne at that time and listened to the plight of his people that loved him so much. Now, Arthas wanted to burst into the throne room and tell his father about the news, but he knew he should be calm and composed, like a true prince should be. When Arthas entered the room, he looked upon his father and remembered that Varian lost his own. The thought of him losing his own father moved him, but he continued on. King Terenas saw Arthas with the corner of his eye and gave him a smile, before Arthas told him about their, new guests. The people in the throne room started to move around and wanted to leave, but King Terenas stopped them by raising his hand and telling them to continue their talks and their problems, because his guests would arrive when they would arrive. Now, Arthas was overjoyed with pride to see his father like that, in such a kingly demeanor. Now, Arthas, remember, he was 9 years old, so he asked his father if he should go out and greet the guests by himself. But the king refused him, even telling him that he should not participate in the following meeting at all. Now, Arthas was not pleased with that, as you can imagine, but he knew better than to argue with his father, and thus he left the throne room. Now, you see, Arthas was still a child, and he decided that he's gonna sneak in and hide himself during the meeting. And he did that. He sneaked himself in the throne room and hid himself under a chair. Now, while the meeting was continuing on, he admired Anduin Lothar for his posture and the warrior spirit that he always carried with him. During this meeting, Arthas learned about the fate that befell Stormwind, and even more importantly, about their orcs and their brutish nature. Now, King Tyrannus would invite Varian to stay in the palace, and that's an act that made Arthas happy, because now he had a new playmate, one of noble birth like himself, that was also a boy, and not a girl like his sister, Kalia. But you see, that happiness kind of quickly went away when Arthas heard Anduin Lothar mention war and its inevitability. An hour after that, King Tyrannus would bring Prince Varian to meet young Arthas. Now, Arthas' father would tell him that Varian was now in his care. The two boys sat around saying nothing to each other for quite an awkwardly long time. But once Arthas exposed his remorse for King Lane, he would learn that the king was assassinated by a trusted friend. Now, Arthas tried to comfort the young prince, telling him about the foe he helped with. Arthas tried to cheer him up, but the young Prince Varian could now cry in peace, where none of his subjects could see him. Once the Second War had started, Arthas hoped that he could learn how to fight properly. But to his disappointment, everybody that could teach him how to fight left for the war. Thus, his only sparring companion was Prince Varian. And you see, there was a problem there. Prince Varian had been trained from a young age on how to fight, but Arthas wasn't. You see, King Tyrannus was very protective of his son, and he wanted to make sure Arthas wouldn't get harmed. On the other hand, Varian, knowing this, made him refuse to, spare with Arthas in fear of hurting him. But the Prince of Stormwind promised that once the war was over, he would personally come with Arthas to convince his father to let him train. Once the Second War had ended, Ogrim Doomhammer was captured. The great war chief of the Horde was finally captured, and he was brought to the capital city to be paraded around, in full display of the people. It was then when Arthas saw hate, true hate, on the face of his people, and even more importantly, on that of Prince Varian. Arthas thought, how would he feel if, for example, his father or Uther would end up being killed thanks to the orcs? And he knew then that he would share the same sentiments that Varian had right then. Now, you see, during this time, Arthas will be granted his first horse, and that is none other than the foal he helped birth. Following the Lordoranian tradition of naming your horse after something, after a virtue or valor, Arthas decided to name him Invincible. We're going to jump forward a little bit, and at this point Arthas is 11 years old. Now, Arthas would meet his dearest friend Meridian Bronzebeard in what we can presume to be, and quite is, in fact, not only presume, a quite comical act. Now, see, Arthas was play fighting an armor upon a stand, pretending that the armor is an orc. He would imitate the move that he saw Varian do until his sword flew out of his hand and into Meridian Bronzebeard. Now, at that point, Meridian Bronzebeard acted as a dwarven ambassador for the Alliance. And as you would expect, Arthas knew of Myrddin's reputation as a strong warrior and fighter. And of course he was embarrassed for such a great warrior to see him pretend to be fighting orcs. Now, the Dwarven ambassador only wanted to know directions to where his father would be, and Arthas was eager to provide him. But after that was done, Arthas left. You see, Arthas ran in shame to the stables to ride his horse. It was one of his favorite hobbies. But unfortunately, he couldn't ride Invincible. You see, the stable master told him that the 2-year-old colt was still too young to be rode. And thus, Arthas had to ride a different horse, a much older horse, while Invincible followed them on a training leash. Now, as you would expect, Arthas was annoyed with waiting to get proper training, waiting to ride his horse, and so on. And because of that, he decided he would ride Invincible. He threw himself up on his own horse, but there was a slight problem. You see, the stable master was right. At that time, Invincible was not prepared to be rode. So Invincible started to fight back by neighing and kicking all over the place. The young prince was holding on to the mane of the horse for dear life. But sooner than he imagined, and probably most of us, Invincible started galloping. And that made Arthas a very happy child. But all that happiness came to a halt once Invincible managed to throw Arthas off of him, and he started running back to the stables. At the point where Arthas returned to the stables, he knew he was in trouble. And at the stables, it was none other than Uther waiting for him. The paladin scolded him about missing his lessons and his recklessness with Invincible, and then proceeded to hurry him along to get to the chapel for the prayer session. As you would imagine, Arthas went and got himself cleaned, and then went to the chapel for the prayer session. And there, he laid eyes upon a beautiful girl that instantly mesmerized him. And that was Jaina Proudmoore. He found out her name after the priest of the church started to bless each member of present at that time. Now, he planned to exit the chapel first, and once she was out, he would introduce himself to her. But you see, Myrddin had other plans. Myrddin came in and stopped Arthas in the middle of his tracks so they can talk. Myrddin offered to train the young prince, a fact that made Arthas rejoice, but then he realized that now he couldn't present himself to Jaina. He watched Jaina leave with his sister, but his luck turned around a little when the girl turned towards him. Their eyes met, and she smiled at him. Now, eventually, Jaina would end up staying just 1 week in Lordaeron, but in that time, Arthas could barely see her. His training sessions and his lessons became more intense, and all the free time he could have was spent passing out of exhaustion at night. The young boy learns the rules of rulers. Now, at the end of the week, Jaina was about to leave to Dalaran. So Arthas, with no other remaining options, offered himself to escort Jaina to Dalaran. Of course, his father approved of that, seeing that his lessons in politics and history have really paid off. Jaina was also delighted when she heard of that. Of course, they would not be journeying alone. They had 2 guards and a maid that would be accompanying them at a distance, so the noble children, would get to know each other. Now, the guards wanted to camp out in Amber Mill to take the hospitality of the people there, but Arthas refused, proposing it's better to camp in Hillsbrad. Now, the guards tried to justify why the hospitality of the locals would be better for Jaina rather than, sleeping in a field. But she cut the guard off, letting him know that she could camp very well. And so later on, at night, once the guards and the maid had went to sleep, Arthas woke Jaina up to take her on a small adventure. And that small adventure would be to an internment camp to see orcs up close. In the beginning, Jaina refused to, go to the internment camps. It was a bad idea. She refused, logically. But later on, she accepted it exactly as Arthas was like, okay, fine, I'll just take you back to the camp. And thus they went. They managed to dodge the guards and the watchtowers, and they went quietly towards one of the internment camp walls. There, they found some holes in the wall, and they started to look at the orcs. Jaina was moved to see that the orcs were in lethargy, to see them defeated, with no will to live. But Arthas argued about how they've destroyed Stormwind, killed her brother, and how they are killers. In truth, none of these arguments really moved the Lady Proudmoore. But Arthas kinda knew this would be her reaction, She's a girl. And thus, accepting that thing, they started to walk back to their camp and rest for the night. Now, the next day, they would reach Dalaran. And to Arthas, this city was amazing. It was so to Jaina as well. But to Arthas, it was amazing. It almost made him wish he was a mage. But alas, he wasn't. The two noble children exchanged the idea that it would be nice to see each other again, and they both went on their merry way. Now we're gonna jump forward a little bit some more. At 14 years old, Arthas was able to make Muradin Bronzebeard yield. He managed to defeat the dwarven warrior. And during their time together, Muradin grew to respect Arthas, and vice versa. Now that day was a happy one for Arthas, until he entered his sister's room because he heard his father scream at her. And Arthas got to see his father being furious. Now, once King Tyrannus left, Arthas would try to console his sister Kalia, and then she basically told him the truth that King Tyrannus wanted to marry her to Lord Prestor. Against her will, of course. Now, Arthas tried to be a comforting brother, but she made him promise he would let his children choose who to marry. And that sent Arthas in a thinking spiral. Would Jaina love him? Would she say yes to their marriage? He left his crying sister and went on a ride on Invincible. Now, riding his trustworthy steed always calmed him down, and it was always a pleasure for him. Now we're gonna go through another jump. Arthas is 17 at this point, and he managed to convince his father to let him do a surprise inspection upon Durnhold, the center of the internment camps. Now, once there, he found a drunk Aedelas Blackmore, smelling of wine. His host presented him the internment camps, drunkenly, but Arthas was more interested in the pit fights that he heard were being staged there. Lord Blackmore, trying to be a good host, brought Arthas happily to see the fights. And it was there that Blackmore presented him his best fighter, his pride and joy, Thrall. Arthas watched Thrall fight a bear and 3 men at once. And while looking on, he understood that it was a mistake, a grave mistake, to teach an orc how to act like a human, to teach an orc military strategies, and how to fight like a human, proper fighting. If Thrall would escape, he would be able to teach others. Now, during this surprise inspection, one night during his visit, Lord Blackmore sent to Arthas to his chambers, the maid Tareta, to tempt him. Now, in the beginning, Arthas was kind of a klutz. He didn't understand what was happening. But once Tareta continued that she was sent there to tempt him, and once he saw the bruises upon her hands, he kind of understood what Blackmore wanted of Tareta and him. And thus, he proposed to Tareta that she could stay as much as she wants in his room without any obligations or anything until she was safe enough to leave. At the end, after she spent a few hours there, Tareta left happily and told Arthas that she's glad to know that Lordaeron would have a kind-hearted king. Now we're gonna do a 2-year gap. Arthas is 19. Now we're gonna do a little time jump now again. Arthas was close to reaching 19 years old. At that age, he could join the Order of the Silver Hand as a proper paladin. Now, his father and Uther were out that day, and Arthas had nothing really else to do, and he decided to enjoy his favorite hobby, riding Invincible. Now, you see, it was winter, and it was cold. The snow upon the ground slowed down Invincible, but neither the prince nor the steed seemed to mind since they were enjoying their time, even through the snow. Snow started to fall, as you would expect during that time, and Arthas decided rather than going back to the palace, he would go to the Balniers, so that the stable master and his son could see Invincible all grown up and big. Now, Arthas pushed Invincible on and on until they reached a jump, one they have done many times before, one that was Arthas' favorites. But this time around, the weather was against him, and before Invincible could jump, his rear hoof slipped on the ice, throwing both the horse and the prince towards some rocks. There, Invincible laid in agony, losing blood while Arthas was passed out. The nigh of pain from Invincible woke Arthas up. His body was broken, in pain. He could barely move to reach his steed. But once he did, he saw Invincible laying in a pool of blood. His legs were shattered. First, Arthas was hit by disgust at the gruesome image. But then he started to weep. He started weeping next to his trusted steed. He knew there was no way to save his steed. No healer was nearby. He could not get one from the court fast in time. There was only one solution. Arthas removed his sword from his sheath, and Invincible calmed down, as if he knew what was going to happen. Arthas killed his mighty steed with one blow to the heart, ending its suffering. Arthas would be rescued next by the Balniers. But it was in that moment that Arthas took a vow unto himself, a vow unto his own. If anybody was ever in need of protection, he would do it, no matter the cost. And we're gonna go through another jump now, a few months later in Stormwind. Arthas is going to be inducted into the Order of the Silver Hand. Doubt clouded his mind, though. Arthas did not feel prepared to become a paladin, and he told Uther about it. And Uther assured him by telling him that nobody ever feels ready, and nobody ever feels worthy because nobody is. Compared to the light, nobody is. But they still do it. In the Church of Stormwind, where his introduction would be, he saw many noble faces, but he only cared for one, and that was the one of Jaina Proudmoore. During his introduction into the Order, he received blessings from the clerics of the Church of Light and that of the founding paladins, Uther, Tyrion, Saidan, and Gavinard. Arthas accepted his vows to the Silver Hand, and with the blessing of the light, he had finally become a paladin. Later on, while people were cheering for him in the church, Arthas shared one hug with Jaina. But before he could decide what to do next, she was already gone. Now we're gonna move a little bit further on. In the Guardians of Dalaran, Jaina and Keota's Sunstrider, the Prince of the High Elves, ended their conversation. Then Arthas came to surprise Jaina by telling her that Arthas would spend some time in Dalaran to study history and how magic influences the world. But in truth, he came there for Jaina. During that time, Arthas continued to pester Jaina and interrupt her studies until she went on a picnic with him. Leaving the meadows and the plains, they went on to a place that still had snow. They ate and drank and slept a little, of course, as you do. Till Jaina woke up and she found herself alone. At first, she had no problem with it. But then she started to panic. And as panic started to engulf her, she found herself on the receiving end of a snowball fight. They both laughed at the situation and shared one kiss. Now Arthas would spend some more time in Dalaran, and while in Dalaran he would learn many things. One of them being Jaina's schedule, so they could meet each other in secret. You see, they like to keep their relation, on the sneaky side. Something not many people would see or know about, but it's better for both of them. But Keotas would catch the two lovers while they were hiding in the shadows. Now, the High Elf was jealous. You could see the angers in his eyes, and you didn't even need magic. Arthas could see him by himself. The elf did promise to keep their relation a secret. And for all intents and purposes, that's what he did. Jaina and Arthas kept their relation a secret. But somehow their parents knew about it and even discussed the matter. And both parties approved of it. And such, both the Proudmoore family and the Menethil family would, send their children to gatherings and events. And thus, Jaina and Arthas were sent to spend holidays together. They would spend Noble Garden together. And while they were supposed to spend Midsummer, they didn't really get it because Jaina was busy. But the next one, it was during House End that they spent it together. And you see, during House End, Arthas grabbed Jaina's arm. And she grabbed his. In front of everybody, Arthas took her to the Wicked Man. And Arthas offered the burning of the effigy to Jaina. And you see, she did pretty well with that. She burned the effigy, no problem. Now, all the peasants in the land will be calling her for next year. After that, they will join the ceremonies with the common folk, to the dismay of the guards. You see, later on, fornication between the two would later ensure, but we're not going to talk about that. Now, let's move on to another event. During the time between House End and the Feast of Wintervale, a celebration brought by Meridian Bronzebeard to the people of Lordaeron, the Menethil family will start treating Jaina as one of their own, as part of their family. Yet Arthas was feeling a little bit uneasy. Arthas' mother would ask Jaina, and ask is a loose term, would take Jaina to help her with the ball of Feast of Wintervale preparation, and King Turnus would have Jaina at his left side, while Arthas stood at his right. She was getting pretty close there. Until one moment when Arthas was admiring the snow, Jaina came to him dressed in a white gown. It was a white gown that his mother had picked for her. Now they had this silly discussion about, oh, it's snowing and there's enough ammunition for snowball fights. Jaina at some point mentions that their children would be blonde for sure. And at this point, Arthas would suffer a moment of lapse in judgment, like he did at the cathedral in Stormwind. You see, in the beginning when he was 14, he wanted to marry Jaina, but now he became somehow less serious about it. Oh. And he told Jaina he isn't ready. Now Arthas tried to go the way of, we'll always be friends and we're friends and stuff. We still remain friends, right? But of course Jaina wasn't going to have it. And like every man ever, Arthas would continue to dig a hole so deep there was no way of saving him out of it. He would just try on to make it, we're not ready yet, we have so much to do, we're still young. He would try to hug Jaina and she was stiff as a stone, until she finally gave in and was like, yeah, screw it. My fault for believing you. Whew. Remember, an important detail, that they broke up their relation at the ball of the Feast of Winterville. And now Arthas had a friend to escort. Everybody partook in the ball. They've danced, they've cheered, they've eaten. And Arthas got a moment of the snow falling down, and he wondered, why do all bad things happen during the winter? And this is the end of the first part. The next part will feature the events of Warcraft 3 and still parts from Rise of the Lich King. Anyway, remember to like, comment, and subscribe if you have been enjoying this. Thank you very much.